Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I It's alive!
Welcome to where the weird ones are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is with author Olivia James. I will say this is a fake name, and this episode is audio only. Um, but I did it so that YouTube could still get it and listen because I think it's an intriguing story. Um, it's like it's a 20 and back story. Had a mission on Mars. She was in the gifted program doing remote viewing and whatnot, and now she is capable of hosting like demons, evil spirits, where she willingly is possessed, but she no harm comes to her, which is hard to believe in stories that I've heard. Um I just hope I just hope she continues to be safe. So, but her story is extremely intriguing, interesting, scary. Um, it brings out a lot of different emotions. But she's gonna come back and she's gonna give some more details. Um, we I think we covered this in an hour and a half. 2 hours is my max. I feel like over 2 hours is way too much. But I really enjoyed talking to her. She seems like such an amazing person. I mean, you can check out her books, The Gray Mouse. There's two. It's a two book series. It's The Gray Mouse and then The Gray Mouse Purgatory. And you can find those on Amazon under Olivia James. Um, Again, I mean, I'm grateful that she came on to tell her story. It means a lot, and I am looking forward to speaking to her again and bringing more of her story to you guys. Um, so, anywho, I will say that I am grateful for everybody who listens and checks out the show. It means a lot to me. Um, I switched over to Spreaker from Castbox recently, and it seems like everything got renewed. Like, so if you were following on whatever podcatcher you were following on and you're not and you're like, what the heck is going on? I mean, I know it's kind of hard to for me to talk to you now if you're not getting the new episodes anyway, so you're probably like, I don't know. Regardless, if you find this, you just have to follow it again. That's all. Or if you go to if you end up on my YouTube because you're confused. I feel like I did when I switched to Spreaker, I did it like not very smart, obviously, because it didn't update the pages I already had. It just gave me a whole new page, so I ended up with two fucking podcasts. But oh well, it is what it is. I hope everybody that has been following the show is has able been able to find it again. It means a lot to me. I've had a lot of people reach out, so that just goes to show how many people are actually listening and stuff. And because a lot of at this point, like, I just don't pay attention to how many people are actually listening and downloading. Like, I don't care about that stuff. I care about the conversations that I have on here, and all that. So, um, but I really enjoy the feedback. I really enjoy the ratings and the reviews and all that stuff. So, keep them coming if you're interested in giving them. It's a free way to support the show, and help it, get monetized or fucking get to somebody else, um, other people that might find it interesting. So, 2025 is bringing on new events, and as of right now, the first event that I will be going to this year, most likely, I haven't 100% decided, but I am extremely interested in vending and bringing hot sauce and shit to this one. It's Cryptids of Curiosity at the Thick and Thin Brewery in Hagerstown, Maryland. It's an event it's noon to 5, I believe. And that's in Maryland, if I didn't already say that. So, um, yeah, I may have hot sauce there. If any of you are in the area and want to come check it out. Apparently they sold out last year. They did it last year and they sold out. So I guess it's a popular event. So we'll see if I go anyways. But quick shout out to the sponsor, Flavors of the Forest. Dude, this garlic dust is the shit. You're not gonna find. I promise you, when you get garlic powder from the store, it is nowhere near being as good as this. Because I like garlic, and I put it on a lot of stuff, and you know, once I switched to the Flavors of the Forest garlic, I was mind blown, mind blown. It's everything I need, everything that I want. They sent me a new care package. They have a new flavor, infused garlic, which is horseradish. Really excited to try that. Looking forward to that for sure. So, and as soon as I do, I'll let you all know how it how it tastes, how I like it. I'm not a fan of horseradish to begin with, so we'll see. But I think I want to make a hot sauce flavor using horseradish, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Just because I'm not a fan of horseradish, so I don't want to promote things that I'm not a fan of. So, which is why it's taken me so long to put the supplements out. 'Cause I still haven't tried them all. Oh fuck! All right. So, but yeah, again, this garlic dust, dude, it's standalone. It's on a pedestal. The fucking and it's way higher than any garlic dust you're gonna get, any garlic powder you're gonna get from your local store. So you can get that at flavorsforest.com. You can also follow them on Instagram, Flavors Forest at Flavors Forest. Nelson and Matt, fantastic dudes. Love them to death. I'm gonna be sending them some more of my hot sauce here shortly. So yeah. Um, if anybody's interested as well, I was recently on Into the Fray with Shannon LeGros. She's an amazing person. Love her voice. She has if she ever did audible books, and I don't. There's a lot of people out there that I love hearing their voice, like Nomar Slevik, who's a good friend of mine now. I love listening to him talk. Eric Salaji from the Uncomfortable podcast. Love listening to him talk, and then Shannon. So if the three of them wanted to do audiobooks, man, that'd be fantastic. I'd love listening to them talk. So, but yeah, Into the Fray Radio is a fantastic podcast. It's similar to this. Um, and Shannon does a really good job, I think. She does work with small town monsters. She's in a lot of their few of their documentaries. So, and I think she's an amazing person. So, yeah. So check it out. I was just recently on there. Um, I can't remember. Hold on. I'll look just to let you know for sure what the episode number was. So, if you're really interested, you can check it out. It's episode 482. That's my episode. And I just talk about all the things that I've been through. Um, yeah, all of my encounter stories and such. So, but I think that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Olivia. I enjoyed talking to her. I didn't really talk a lot. We did this audio only. Um, and I don't know, man. The minute she started talking, I was just, I butted in a couple times with some questions and maybe just some theories or something like that, or just other things that I've heard. But I really don't really talk too much. I pretty much shut the fuck up and just Olivia has the reins, man. She's driving the car. So, anyways, check out her books on Amazon, The Gray Mouse. Again, that's Olivia James. So you guys can find it. It's a red cover with a mouse on it. So, yeah. So if you like her stories, the books are based off of of what she talks about in today's episode. So, but further detail. So, without further ado, I give to you Miss Olivia James.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Weird, get weird!
Hello, we are Rachel and Heather, the hosts of Like Mother Like Murder podcast.
And you're listening to Kevin on Where the Weird Ones Are.
Oh.
Today I am joined by Olivia. Olivia, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I say it all the time, almost at every show. Time is our greatest commodity and our greatest currency. And the fact that you are taking the time to come and talk to us about some spooky stuff means the world to me because I love having these kinds of conversations. So
It's so
I'm extremely
interesting.
grateful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So you are an author that I didn't
Yes.
know that you were until about 2 minutes ago before we started recording. So if you don't mind letting everybody know what those books are
Sure.
and what they're about.
They're both on Amazon. They're both memoirs. So it's called the Gray Mouse series. My first book is called Gray Mouse: Sex, Space, and Mind Control, and my second book is called Gray Mouse Purgatory, and I'm currently working on my third book.
And do they tie into each other or?
Absolutely. And I
They
use
all
my
separate?
abilities to continue to obtain more in-depth information about the topic that we're going to speak about.
Okay. All right. That's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Check those books out. Gray Mouse series.
Mhm.
All right. So, if you don't mind, we can dive into what you're here to talk about today.
Sure. I'll start.
Wherever you
I
want to
kind of
start.
sure. I usually when I start a podcast, I like to start at the beginning because then you get an idea of how I came to this point. So I always like to start there
Mm-hmm.
first so people understand how I got here. So what I always say is that I had very interesting parents. And my dad, he's no longer alive, but he was recruited very young at about right out of high school, from a small town to go into military intelligence. And he was recruited for the military intelligence where he was working on the German and Russian border. And he was a code breaker. He learned German in like 6 months. So he was doing that type of
Wow.
work. Yeah, they recruited a kid, for this. So when he got out of the military, he started to work with some more, I don't know how you say it. What we call them cartels now, but back when he was doing it, they usually didn't call them cartels, but they were kind of certain like crime syndicates, drug trafficking, that kind of thing. So he got involved in heavy drug trafficking. He was a very heavy drug trafficker. He would traffic, heroin, marijuana, cocaine across the border in various ways, like bus, plane, car, boat, but his main mode was car. But he was a pilot too. He could fly a plane. So he was doing that. Him and my mom were making a lot of money. And that's, sometimes $50,000 a day. And that's a lot for, young kids to be making that much money back in those days, like in the early
Yeah.
70s, late 60s. That was a lot. So I mean, just anybody, if you've ever known anything about, drug trafficking, the history of drug trafficking, you can research it and look it up, that there was a lot of, I don't know, secret governmental involvement in some of those projects, things like that. So it wasn't just, cartels. There was a lot of other hands involved. And it became so easy for him because of that. It wasn't just because he was so awesome that he never got caught and never got any trouble. They had a lot of agreements and trades and things like that to make it easy. Like if they were going, by bus, if they were stopped and searched, they were never found to be, in trouble, even if they were strapped full with drugs and everything. They never got in trouble or never got caught, anything like that. So people
Yeah.
can
I
research that
had
if you want to learn more. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I had a guest on. His name's Tony Rodriguez. He said, so he had a 20 and back experience where he was taken into this special program and was learning all this stuff like other languages like you're talking about. But he lived like 20 years of his life and then got put back into his 10-year-old body.
Yeah,
And
I
but one
was
of
in
the
20 and
things.
back.
Oh, you
I
were?
was in a
Okay.
20.
So
Yeah, I'll tell you about that. Yeah, I was in 20 and back. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Because he was saying that when it first started, that they were using him for they were telekinesis. Was it telekinesis or
Remote
remote
viewing.
viewing? That's what it was.
Yeah,
Remote
I'm a
viewing.
remote viewer. I'm a remote viewer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would traffic drugs, and he would remote view to see if it was safe for them to cross at that certain time. So I thought I just figured I'd mention that, but
Yeah,
apparently
that's
you already
interesting,
know
right?
all about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very
Yeah, he
interesting.
was yeah, so like I said, they were making a lot of money at a young age. He was doing awesome. And then things started to go bad, and because he got addicted to his own product. And you can't just
Mm,
do that kind of thing because it's so risky. He was risking huge operations. It wasn't just like, his own personal things because of the amount that was coming in. He was risking a lot. So they were
right.
trying to scare him, and they were doing like raids, and, he was getting threatened a lot. And it was hard for him because of his addiction. So he got away with the first raid. They didn't really take him in or anything, but the second time he was missing like drops, missing appointments and things like that. So they decided to raid again, and this time the raid went very successfully, and they took him to jail, and there was a huge public trial in my town, and it was all in the newspapers and everything. There's court documents. If someone was, if I ever was inclined to be forced to provide proof, that's the proof I have for that situation, is there was court documents for it. But what the crazy thing is that he was, it was looking like he was going to go to prison for life for the amount of, drugs that he was bringing into the country and that kind of thing. And, there was nobody to save him because he did that. He was addicted and wasn't doing well. But at the end of the trial, they just let him go, and they said they had the wrong person. And then they gave him a local government job. So they hired a heroin addict, drug trafficker for that. Just said, no, it's the wrong person. Let him go. And gave him back
Hunter
a life.
Biden.
So it was that's very interesting. Obviously, there's more hands involved in that than that to be known. And, my mom's still alive,
Right.
but she's very in the dark, in terms of, I don't know if she was mind controlled or what. She's very in the dark of, what they thought. She's like, I think he was just really good at, getting out of things. I'm like, you're not that good where you can just get out of that's not going to happen. You're not that good.
Yeah, right.
So there were other hands involved. And so what I came to find out is that in order for him to stay out of prison, he actually took a cowardly way. He had to give something up, make a trade to stay out of prison. And what he traded was me. He signed over saying that they could use me for their programs, for him to stay out of prison. So it was kind of like a cowardly way. So I ended up getting,
like that.
Yeah, so I ended up getting used for like MK Ultra programs and mind control and a lot of other things, to save his behind. So when I was about 7, I was taken to a psychiatric hospital, and that's where they started their MK Ultra. And the psychiatric hospital is no longer open, but it's on the East Coast. This place was huge. It was self-sustaining. They had their own, agricultural, where they didn't have to go out to their own farms and everything. They never had to go. There's a lot of underground tunnels under there. So they had us in a very, small wing to the side, private wing. And there was only one other child in the program besides me. There was 2 of us there. And it was really weird when I got there. The main programmer, we call them programmers, somebody that does the mind control, it's a woman. It was a female psychiatrist that was running this program, this small program. She had 2 children there. There were 2 male orderlies that assisted her with all the tasks that they needed to do. So it was me and this other little boy named Jacob. And I used to call him Jake or Jacob, whatever. And what they were doing is her main goal was trying to focus us and to create this process called syncopated dissociation. And what that means is she wanted us to be able to dissociate at the same time, almost like leave the body at the same time if we could. So they were implementing systematic abuse and torture, in order to create that in us. So, they would use, when I say systematically, I remember it because it wasn't a random thing, you're not sitting in a room and then you're not knowing when they're coming and going and what they're going to do. They would do it about every 15 minutes, different physical, emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse things in order to, break your mind down so much, the psyche down, just break it all down in order to recreate it and use those pockets in the mind, once the mind is compartmentalized, to rebuild it and create, new personalities that can be trained to do various jobs, think certain ways, it's all these different personalities, inside you once they break you down. So they were using a lot of, like I said, a lot of physical and sexual and psychological torture. And then at the same time, she was also implementing various chemical processes. Like they used a lot of LSD, electroshock therapy, and lots of hypnosis. So, and that's where she made a lot of breakthroughs, is in her hypnosis sessions with us. There were times that she had us in her office, and she would have us sit in a chair, and we'd put our palms up, and she would put like an acupuncture needle in the middle of your palm, and that triggered you to almost go into like a trance, where she could speak to different parts of you through hypnosis, train these pieces, train these alters. What we call them as alters, is these personalities that are built up after MK Ultra. We call them alters. And I personally have about 118 different personalities. And I have about 6 that are the front personalities. We usually call them front personalities. Those are the ones that really take over the most. So
Wow.
the program
That's a lot.
was going, yeah, the program, she considered the program a success because we took to the torture so well that we stopped responding to pain. We stopped responding to, abuse. We didn't, usually you would think that children are crying and wailing and things. We stopped doing that. We stopped asking to go to the bathroom. We stopped asking for food or drinks. They would withhold it from you anyway or make you eat something disgusting. So you just stopped, and they could hit you or they could hurt you, and there was no response. And that's what they were attempting, to create that, empty shell that had no response, and then they could rebuild it. It's almost like they're making soldiers like that, out of these young children. They really are making soldiers, because if you can handle that, even at 7 years old, imagine what you could do as an adult if you can survive
Oh my
it.
goodness.
And
Yeah.
not every child survives, but they consider it a huge success if you do survive. That means you are meant to be a soldier for them if you survive.
Right. Do you know what they do with the kids that don't survive? Do you have a clue on that?
No, I don't know. I've never seen one. I only know it was me and this other kid, Jacob, there. He survived
Okay.
too. And I remember seeing him once when we were doing electroshock therapy together. They would do it together in the same room. And this was the only time I could see us being children, because I saw him leave his body and I could see him running around the room playing, because that was the only time we could be kids in that situation, is when we left the body. And people, you leave the body when you're trying to escape that torture and that pain. You're somehow your spirit leaves that behind, and you can see yourself like on the table being tortured, but you're somewhere else safe, in a safe spot, like you've protected yourself in a way. And I consider it an ability to be able to dissociate. I consider that an ability because it's almost like it protected me in a way. You're protected certain parts of me in order not to do that. But so we were successful, assets in that situation. And there was something that she found during hypnosis. And when she's doing hypnosis, she was able to go so deep with us. She found information, just not current. She could see what me and Jacob could do. And we went really far. We could find information from past lives and, future lives, parallel lives, information just, with remote viewing, things like that. So it was a huge success for her. And she ended up referring me out to another program. Me in particular, I don't remember seeing Jacob there. It was me. And when I got there, they took me to this office. And the office was, I don't know, it didn't really look like a doctor's office. It was like very neutral type furniture. It almost looked like maybe like a psychiatrist's office. I wasn't sure. But there was one older gentleman there. He was very elderly and frail. He looked like he was like in his 90s. He wore these like little wire rim glasses, and he was kind of like balding on the sides. Very, very thin and frail. So I had never met him before, but his name was Dr. Green. And he had 2 other people in the room with him. They were twins. It was a man and a woman, and they looked like they had some type of albino condition. I'm not quite sure what it would be called, but they just sat there. But if anybody has ever heard of Dr. Green, I'm not quite sure. I just know that people say this, that Dr. Green is another name for Mangala. And I only know him as Dr. Green. So I can't say for sure whether he was that or not, but that's what other people are saying, that Dr. Green is another name for Mangala. So when I was there, I'm just a little kid, and he tells these 2 twins to kind of almost like do an exam on me, look and see. And so they start doing this weird exam. They're looking in my eyes and my nose, my ears, and then finally they look in my mouth, and they look way deep down. And then they turned to Dr. Green and told him, "We found it. We can see the thing inside her." So that's when they took me into this program called Project Traveler, because what they thought they saw was some type of entity attachment, but it wasn't. That's not what it was. So they were wrong in that assumption, but that led them to use me in more occult programming because of what they thought they saw inside me. They thought I was possessed by something, and they were wrong. They saw what was actually me. It was something that I just was. It wasn't like I was, being possessed by something. I just was one of those things. So I was going to talk about some of the past lives that I've discovered and how I can now realize why they would want me, for certain programs, because based on these past lives. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of those that are why I was chosen for some of these programs based on these past lives and why they thought I would be good. So there was a few different past lives that I had that were very impactful on me. There was one where it was about the 1400s and Italy. And I was this woman, an older woman. I had 2 children. My husband had died, so I was kind of a widow. And I had some type of ability in that lifetime and what they would now call a medium. So in the village I was living in, I would, help people, if they wanted to talk to a loved one that had passed, I would try to help them. I'd give them that opportunity to speak to a loved one and get some closure, that kind of thing. So I was doing that pretty regularly, and they were doing trades, vegetables and other goods in order to pay for the service. It wasn't anything monetary. It was mainly, foods and, things I could use around the house. But one day these men came to my house and they just barged in. They punched me in the face, pretty much beat me and dragged me to a wagon and took me off to a dungeon. And there is when they continued doing all the torture, and things like that to try to get me to admit that I was, conspiring with the devil or whatever. And I had no idea what they were talking about. I thought I was helping people, as a medium. I thought I was helping people, but they had branded me a witch. Somebody had told them, and, when the Inquisition came through, somebody had told them, who I was and what I was doing in the village. So it went on for a long time. And the main thing that I remember is being hung from a ceiling. And I didn't die from fire. I wasn't burned at the stake because I died before that. They even had a chance to do that. I died from dehydration and starvation. But I remember being so angry. I had a lot of anger in that life at these men who came and did this to me and, all these other women. They came and just destroyed our lives for no reason, based on their religious views or whatever they thought they were doing, power, maybe control, that kind of thing. So that kind of anger kind of stayed with me, but I also, maintained that ability somehow within inside me. So that was interesting to have that, life of being in, a victim of the Inquisition. And there was another life that I had. So this one was a little bit more eye-opening and controversial for me to find out, and I found these lives myself. This is from my own work that I found these. Nobody else told me. So I don't know, it was about the 1700s, early 1800s, somewhere around there in that time period. I was a male, and I had lost my parents very young. So I had lived as a street kid, kind of traveling, throughout the country, like on foot, from village to village, city to city, wherever I could find, food or temporary work, something like that. But I noticed that there was some type of hunger and darkness inside me during that whole life. And I met somebody else. I had a partner during that life, a friend, and he was like me. I don't know how 2 people like that could find each other, but we were what people would consider like serial killers. So we would look for different, people out in the villages that were maybe, women that were out late or something, trying to get their work done and target them. So what we were doing is going from village to village, trying to assault, and harm, women. And we didn't think we could get caught because we traveled so much. We never would have thought that. And I guess we got kind of arrogant and cocky. And we were in one village and we had just done it. We had just assaulted this person and left her in the field. And we were at a pub drinking and, drinking, having a good time. And they found her pretty quickly. And so we were the only new people in that town. It was very obvious that whoever had, hurt this woman, it had to be us because there was nobody else. It was all, townies or whatever you call them, locals. So we knew we had to run. And so we ran to this barn, me and this other guy that I was with, and we thought we were safe, but the townspeople caught us. And they locked us in the barn and set it on fire. So I remember, towards the end, just trying to climb up into the rafters to get away from the heat, but we ended up burning alive. And we, obviously we deserved it in that lifetime. We kind of deserved
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but it's just, keep that in your mind that was a past life. That's not me now, but these people that were looking for things inside people to use, that was something that they thought they could use. If somebody had been, able to do that in the past, they know what they're looking for. So there was another life I had, and this one was really interesting. It was ancient times, and I don't even know how far back. I couldn't even pinpoint a time when I was looking into this. I couldn't even find a time. I wasn't sure. And I remember I was a male in that time, and we were all just walking. It would look like Egypt, and it was all desert. We were all just walking. Nobody talked, nobody made eye contact, nobody ate, nobody drank, nobody slept. We just kept walking around, moving sand. And if you could look, there was this big, huge pyramid, and there's this huge being standing on this pyramid, and it looks like what people think of as Anubis. I called them the dog people because I didn't know what else to call. I called them the dog people. And so I remember saying that the dog people came and killed our God because our God was the crocodile. And I remember saying that when I was under hypnosis. I said, our God was killed by the dog people. And so that's how they took over. So what these dog people were doing, they wanted us to build these portals, what they called flash portals, but they were inside the pyramids. And I don't know why they wanted it so quickly, but that's why they they almost turned us into I call them like automatons, where we were just like robots, just moving sand for everyone. And people, once you die, you just lay down wherever you're done and die. And they would work us to death with no food, no water, no nothing, just to death until you were used up. So in that life, I was able to see what it was like to be a slave and to be completely controlled in that lifetime. And that's also something that they thought would be useful, because I was already had that mindset and had that lifetime in the past to be controlled, to be a slave to something, mind controlled. They saw that I had that already. So that was something that they could use. So there was one more life that was probably one of the most important to me that I found. And this is how I got picked for Project Traveler. So I saw myself, and it was very ancient times. Like I had been living like this for a long time, and it looked like, I don't know, almost like a desert. So I saw this person walking in a desert. This one guy, he was walking in a desert. I think he was looking for sheep, a lost sheep or something, and he wanted to get the sheep before it turned dark. He wanted to find it before it was too dark. And I remember walking up behind him and like whispering in his ear, and he was so scared, and I thought it was so funny and hilarious that he was scared because he couldn't see me, because I wasn't able to be seen, so I thought it was funny, at the time. And that's when I chose what I call like a prey or a mark, I chose him, and that's how you begin your process of oppression. So I would kind of infiltrate his life, and then wait for that time. I wanted to break him down enough to where he would just let me take over and let me take over his body. So that was the way I lived for a long time. And in that lifetime, I was what people would consider a jinn, a dark jinn. And the dark jinn consider themselves like trickster gods. And I'm not calling myself a god or anything like that. I'm just saying what they say. That's just what they talk, how they talk. They say it's a trickster god. So I called myself a jinn. And the jinn have a very like strict hierarchy in the dark side and things like that. So I know not to like disrespect any type of, entity when they're speaking. You're not supposed to disrespect them. You're supposed to respect the hierarchy, especially if they're ancient kind of beings, elder gods kind of type, not to say anything. But so that's what I would do. And once I was able to oppress this person so much, I would blow up their life. I would make them either hurt themselves, hurt other people, or pretty much just destroy everything they have. And then I would move on to the next person once that was done. And I considered that's how I ate. I considered that my food. And I traveled as energy. I didn't travel physically because I didn't like and a lot of entities, we don't like the response that we get when we, show up to somebody, because we're looking as when we were gods or whatever, considered gods, we were looking for reverence and worshipers. And if you show up in front of your worshipers in your real physical body, they would be disgusted by you. And that's why we didn't like that. So we traveled more as energy. And I particularly traveled as like a red energy and viral. So that's really interesting to know that I traveled as a virus in the blood. I wasn't just, what people consider a regular demon. I traveled through the bloodstream as a virus. So I think that's really interesting to see that some entities are traveling like that. We're able to
That
get
is
into people's
interesting.
bodies like that. Yeah, it's a virus.
Yeah.
So that's another one. That was the life where they said, okay, this person is very different. She used to be, a demon or demonic or dark entity. So we want to put her in this program, because what they were trying to do is, if you think about it, they want to see that power behind the dark side. It's almost like trying to harness the force behind the force, like something so huge that you have no idea. And a lot of people don't know what's out there, what is in the dark side and things like that. And that's what causes the fear, is we're not knowing. But, I've been able to see and speak and things like that. So because of that life, I was left with abilities for things like that, like being able to be a trance medium, doing a lot of remote viewing. I call it cyber remote viewing because I don't use a scientific process or coordinates. I use psychic ability to do my remote viewing. And I'm also doing something called hosting. And that's my main ability, is hosting. So, and that's actually, a demon taught me that word. They said what I am is a host. I do hosting. So hosting is where I'm allowing myself to be voluntarily possessed. And I've done it so many times. I do it a lot of times. I just did it not that long ago, a couple weeks ago. But when I'm in this hypnotic situation, I go into very deep trance. So I'm connecting to the highest part of myself in order to do this process. It's not, it's only an ability specific to me. So I wouldn't recommend anybody else try it, because I know it doesn't harm me physically or psychologically in any way. I'm fine. I can do this. I can let a demon take over my body and speak through me. And then when I'm done doing that, I can go and make a sandwich. So it doesn't harm me. So I don't want anybody to try it. It's just something that I can do based on, my past history and whatever was inside me. That's why I can do it. And that's even the demons, or sometimes the dark side, or different entities. They told me, when I start to go under like a trance, it's like this big, huge light, like just bursting. And that's how they find me. And they say it's because, they don't, what would be the point of harming me or anything, because I am one of them. There's no point in that. I mean, like, to me, they considered me like a kindred spirit, because I'm one of them. They would, there's no point in harming me. There's no point in trying to take over me. Why would they take over another demon? That doesn't make sense to them. So it was really interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So
it was really
real quick before you move on,
sure.
I find it really interesting. So you had all these past lives. So you had the Jinn past life, which is practically a demon in a sense, and you have this other life where you're killing people. So that's a negative association. So you disassociated yourself from I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but you disassociated yourself from like regular civilization to become something else, because you wanted that in that particular life, that kind of pleasure. And then you had the other one where you were easily broken down as a slave. So number one, they saw that you could be controlled. They saw that you have the ability to disassociate yourself to do cruel things. They saw that you were a witch helping people with abilities, so they know you have abilities, that you bring these abilities through each of your lives. And now that you're in this life, that's basically, it seems like they saw all this stuff to groom you into being one of them.
Kinda, yeah.
Does that make
And I was
sense?
just gonna say,
Yeah.
kind of. And I was gonna say that when I was a Jinn, I didn't know I was evil. You know why? Because I didn't know what the word evil meant. I had chosen that role. I chose that role because I have been to the in-between place using my abilities. I went to the in-between place and I saw my guide. And he literally told me after a death, he said, go wherever you want. Which way do you want to go? You want to go forward, backward? He said, there's no limit. You choose. So I know that it was a choice for me, and I chose it because I wanted to bring that experience to people. And that's how I felt as a jinn. I said, and people do call it. I don't care what anybody says. They have called it and they still call it. And we call it the beckoning. When you're a demonic entity, you call it the beckoning. You're waiting for that. And that's when people call you, and they do. They're calling you to take over, sometimes they call you to take over their life instantly. They're saying, yes, come and, take over from me. They do it all the time. And that's how we lived for thousands of years because of that. We were looking for, a host that we could take over. So, like I said, I didn't even know what the word evil meant, because I felt in my being that I was helping them. Because I was like, they want darkness experience. I'm here to bring it to them. Why would that be considered bad? I didn't know the word evil. So it was really interesting, to see inside the mind of one of these beings, thinking like, oh, I didn't even know. What was really tripped me out of all the entities that I've spoken to, all the, famous elder gods and things. The one thing that really tripped me out is when I can connect to a different part of them, and they have their own religion. They worship too. They worship gods too. Or their own God.
Really?
Yeah, they have religion. They're not just, these empty souls that, never, especially because I know I'm one of them. So I went from that to this. So to me, it's been such a, I can't even explain it, mind-blowing experience to get in the heads of these things, or even just talk to them. And, they have such different, way of seeing things, and a way of, talking and living. It's so interesting to be able to connect with them and let them speak through me, and let them take over my body for a short time, just so they can step into this world and provide us information that we would never get. No one would ever know this stuff if I wasn't, taking this risk to let something take over my body and provide this, because we're only given information from like books and movies and things like that. It's so much different to actually experience it firsthand, let them talk to me, let them talk to other people. I'll even go into trance and let them speak to other people and things like that in order to get information. So it's so interesting.
Oh, wow. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to continue with that. So after I got done with, when they had chosen me from the programs and things like that, they did a couple of different experiments in that particular psych hospital before I left. They had one where it made me very conflicted, because, these humans were torturing me constantly. So they had me go into this, and I was just a kid, mind you, I was 7. So they put me in a dark room for sensory deprivation. It had nothing to do with water, but it was just a dark room, and they blindfolded me and hooked me up to an IV. And they wanted me to go into trance and allow things to take over my body, because they wanted to see with scientific measurements what kind of output, or, maybe electrical expression would come from having these things inside me. So I would let these beings take over my body, and they would, periodically do like body systems checks, blood pressure, things like that. And they were taking measurements, certain things like that, kind of trying to make it a scientific process, if you will. And they did that for a few days. So it was conflicting to see that, and plus they weren't giving me any food, no water, no nothing. I only had the IV. So I've almost felt like these entities, when they were taking over my body, they were keeping me alive. They were sustaining me. And it was the humans were torturing me. So imagine that can be very conflicting when you're being tortured by humans and helped by, what people consider demons. I don't call them demons, because to me, that's not even what they are. Sometimes they say daemon, and it's a really old word, and they almost call it like a familiar spirit. So not exactly like what we would consider like, Beelzebub or something like that. I don't know how they have a whole different way of talking. Like I said, they have their own people and things, and their own practices and own lives. So it's very much different from what a lot of us would, expect. So I ended up leaving there. And they had me doing, I don't know, I guess I shouldn't get into all the what we consider like beta work, when they have children doing certain things, physically, with men, things like that. They had some of that going on.
Yeah.
But when I was about 13, they decided that I was ready for some type of training, and they wanted me to do additional training. And what they were trying to train me for is personality profiling. So they said I had to go to this base and do this training. And I didn't talk. I didn't ask questions. I wasn't meant to. I knew, like, if they want me to snap into an altar, all it takes is a code or a word or a sound for them to do that. It's very easy. And I ended up having a chaperone. It was a man. He was dressed really nice. He had a hat on and things like that, in a nice suit. He didn't talk or anything, but he was my chaperone. And he took me on a train. And this is the craziest thing. I understand it sounds crazy to people, and it will sound crazy. But I got on a train, and I ended up at the end of the ride, I was on a base on the moon by train. I don't know. Like I said, I was only a kid. I was only 13, so I don't remember, how of course I'm not going to be able to explain a process like that of how I was able to do that. I was only 13. I was a kid. So I won't know, I know people they kind of get upset if I don't know. Well, how did the train work? How did you get there? And I don't know. I was only a kid. So when I got to the base, I'm scanning the base and things. I can't remember, but I thought it was level 4 underground. I can't remember exactly. But what they wanted me to do was take a psionics class. And, the woman that was running this psionics class, she wasn't too happy about having a kid in her class. She mostly worked with adults. I don't think she had the patience for a child, probably. But because I had a note in my file that said I was from the special sector, that she had to take me and teach me. And she was very hard on me, very firm. And I mean, at the time, I didn't, obviously I didn't care for that. I was just a kid, but now I look back and I see she was trying to protect me and keep me alive, because I remember the phrase she always said, and it was really important to her that it had to be, she always told me, you have to be so quick. It takes one look and one word to know, who this person is, because she was expecting that I was going to be pushed into situations. Well, I would need to be fast. I would need to read a room fast. I need to figure out if there was a threat very quickly, just by profiling the person, reading that energy, so she tried really hard.
Yeah.
And there was a few other people in the class that they had abilities that I had no idea what they were going to do with. Like one of them talked to animals. One of them was, leaked water from their body. I don't know what they would even do with that. I don't know how.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what they were going to do with that, but they must have thought there was some usage to it, or maybe they were training that person for something different. So I guess I was successful in the personality profiling, and they didn't use me again until I was about 19. That's when I started like my 20 and back. But I was taken back and forth from Earth and from another place called Mars, where I was on Mars for quite some time after I got a promotion. So right around, age 19, they had me doing a lot of what I consider like gray mouse work, which is corporate espionage work, and a lot of beta, what I call beta tracking. It's a term I used. So beta tracking is pretty much, I don't know, some people would consider it honeypots and other people consider it intel gathering. So I would have to start a relationship if they told me, end it if they told me, and, do whatever they told me to do. If they said you need to start a relationship with this person and make sure you keep your eyes open and ears open, I did that. And a lot of times I wouldn't have to do anything because I have an altar that has a photographic memory. So if I'm in that particular altar, all I have to do is be around the person and it's constantly recording. So if somebody wanted to debrief, if they wanted to interrogate me, they wouldn't get the information because I wouldn't know it. Like my front personality has no idea. It's way big, deep. So somebody would have to debrief, with extreme hypnosis in order to get at that information, but it's there. So they would use that. Wow. So that's kind of the process they would use. I would have to do whatever they wanted, with that particular, we call them marks, with this particular mark, whatever they wanted. So I did that for a long time. And I ended up getting a promotion, and they said it was for a job well done. So they ended up sending me to the corporate sector on Mars. So that's where I started my, personality profiling work. I was working for Mars Defense Force, and my particular division was Division Mariner. So I was under Ground Force Battalion, but in the corporate sector under Division Mariner. So I wasn't around a lot of the other soldiers a lot of the times. The only time I interacted with them is when they came in my office. So my office was on the McCreary base, and that's in the South Canal region of Mars. And that's right near like what we call like a landing bay or loading dock where some of the cargo ships would come in. I was kind of right near there. So my particular job was I would have somebody come into my office, and these were like new recruits coming in. So they would come. And so I was just going to say, back in those days, back in the time when I was starting as a child and things, they were using a lot of trauma-based mind control. They were kidnapping children. They call them my labs. So it's pretty much forced. But now they have a lot of volunteers, because they're using people straight from the military, and they're telling they're going, they say they're going overseas, but they're actually going to Mars for, a term, whatever, sometimes 20 years. It just depends. So now a lot of the recruits now are volunteers, and they're thinking they're going to be, fighting aliens, this stuff I was almost said SHIT, but they think they're going to be doing things that they see in the movies. And when they get there, it's completely different, because it's a real military base, and they need everybody to run the base. There's colonists and everything. So when they come to my office, I would, spend maybe like an hour with them doing various evaluations, assessments, but I was using personality profiling and, reading. It's basically making them talk so I can read between the lines of what they're saying. And in that process, I was able to, kind of construct like a profile and what job would be good for them. And once I got that, all set up, I would send my recommendation up to be signed by the general, who at the time when I was on the base was called General Asher. So he would sign off on that, and that person would be placed, in whatever division. There was like a water treatment, waste treatment, mining, resources. There was an entertainment division, agriculture, water treatment, things like that. So there was janitorial work needed. I mean, all the different jobs that would keep, a city and a base running was needed. So like I said, a lot of these people thought they were going to be fighting in wars and things, and they ended up working like maybe as janitors or in the water treatment station, things like that. I didn't work a lot with super soldiers. They were under special sector, so they would be referred out. And once in a while, I would get somebody that came into my office that would be considered, special sector. They had some type of ability that I would know about. But a lot of people weren't a fan of me because, obviously because I was corporate. So they were working for the man, kind of. I was like working for the man. But part of my job was I had to identify people that would not, stick with the status quo. So they wanted to make sure that I would identify any dissenters or people that were, maybe thinking that they could be rebellious against those people in charge. That was not a thing. You weren't allowed to rebel against them. It was completely controlled there in all aspects. So I ended up doing that for a really long time. Like I said, not everybody was a fan of me. And there was one time that I thought this was cool. There was one time that I tried to get like a little bit of extra, favors or to people to look at me in a different way. So the entertainment division, they have these exhibitions that they do sometimes on weekends for the colonists and other people that, have the weekend off or whatever. So I decided to sign up as, volunteer for one of that. And sometimes they would have women, kind of like, it's almost like UFC, like doing fighting in the ring, but you would use swords and you fight to the death or whatever. But if you did that and volunteer for that, you get a reward. So some of the other girls were asking for silly things, and I knew what I wanted for my reward if I won. I told them, a steak and baked potato, because the food on this planet is not like delicious. It's not delicious. And I thought that sounded amazing. Steak and baked potatoes. So you risk your life for something like that. Just for a steak, you would risk your life. So that was really interesting. I won once, but I think I lost 3 times. But that's okay. I ended up getting my snacks or whatever. So what I thought was interesting is that I went through this whole process, and I was doing this, profiling for a long time. I was doing really well. I was in this really cush position. Nobody really would talk to me though, because, they considered me, corporate or whatever. But something happened to me when I was on Mars, and I ended up getting demoted because what I know now is like I was having, I don't know, like breakthrough memories of my real life, my Earth life, because I was in a 20 and back. I had been taken at a certain time, and I was being used, and then I was going to be, at the end of that term of service, I was going to be retired and sent back, to that particular age would have been 19. So I would have been in my 20 and back from 19 to 39. So I ended up my programming started to break down. So I knew there was something wrong, and I just couldn't pinpoint it. I was sneaking into my boss's office, looking through his computer and his papers. I couldn't find anything. I just knew something was off, and I just had a horrible time. I didn't feel good, and I know now that I was probably had depression, but in that particular planet, you're not allowed to have depression. There's no such thing as depression. You didn't have a chance to be depressed. So I didn't really know what that meant. There wasn't a word for it. I knew something was wrong. And I was having all these memories and bleed through. So it was really crazy to experience that and be demoted. So they demoted me because I wasn't able to do the same job, because I had to, I couldn't profile if I had all this other stuff in my head. I was very off focus. So they ended up sending me to work on this medical satellite station. And on that place, I was just basically like a medical social worker, because they were doing a lot of like augmentation and different kind of like experimental processes that people would frown upon. And they would have me go into this place and kind of convince these people to sign the papers, because they take consent very seriously in a lot of these programs. And even now there's paperwork with people's signatures on it saying that you consented to whatever they did to you, whatever they do after you, because when you leave that place, there's a huge stack of paperwork for you to sign. And it's pretty much you're agreeing with your signature to be monitored and controlled for the rest of your life once you're returned. And once after retirement, you've agreed to that, to be monitored and controlled your entire life. So a lot of us got stuck, being controlled, targeted, harmed for the rest of our lives. If we started getting memories back, or if we started talking about it, there would be a lot of targeting situations because of that. And these signatures, from what I know, these people say that the papers hold up in all courts. And I've remote viewed some of the documentation, and they use this very generalized legal language in order to make sure that it hold up in courts. And they say Earth courts and galactic. So whatever papers we sign. So if there were ever to be a time where we would be able to like file some lawsuit, they're going to say you gave us permission because your signature's right here. And it is there. There's a lot of papers still there. They keep it. They use a subcontracted human resources office, and that's where they keep all their paperwork, because they don't keep it on base because that's, risky. They use a contracting agency to, for their human resources work in that way. So that was kind of like the process of that. And once I hit my 20 years, like I said, I was on that medical satellite station for a while, and I was signing off on like incoming cargo ships and things like that. So it wasn't anything exciting on Mars. I'm sure people wanted to hear about aliens, that I fought aliens on Mars. I didn't. I was an office worker. So of course I was disappointed too when I found that out. Like, I wasn't fighting aliens. Right. I was in an office. So, but I have had other crazy experiences and things like that. So that was the basic part of that. So when I was able to leave and go into retirement, I got returned to my previous age. And from what I remember, it was chemicals. I don't remember any kind of like blinding lights or anything like. It was a full chemical process to be, returned to my crappy life. I got returned back to my crappy life and lived the rest of my crappy life like that. But what happened was, when I want to say this was about 5 or 6 years ago now, this is when I started to have actual memories, because I was, pretty much under mind control and had shifting alters my entire life until about 6 years ago. And, it was happening so much and so often. And I didn't even have a word for it then. I had to start, I started hypnosis just for, emotional issues. And the first time I did it, I couldn't believe I was under for almost 6 hours. And the stuff I was saying was just, it was insane. I don't even know how anybody could, understand how mind-blowing it was to be able to say things and, have things speaking through me. And I didn't even know that was something I can do, because I hadn't lived my life like that. I hadn't remembered. I had lost all the memory of what I had done before, and there was so many different stories, so many things happening, throughout my whole life. I just couldn't put a finger on what it was. And when I left, I was quoted for reentry, and under a sector called linguistics and retrieval. So that means they could use me whenever they want. They can do it now because I signed for it if they wanted to. I'm old now, but if I was younger, they could have used me at any time. I think the last time I remember being physically taken, like literally physically, was probably in my mid-30s. And that day, it was really strange day because I was just, I think it was summer, maybe late spring. It was pretty warm out, so I was laying on my couch. I had, shorts and a tank top on. I wasn't really doing much, and I remember kind of like dozing off, but then when I remember my eyes snapped open, and I was in a different house. I was in like this huge mansion, and all I knew is that I had orders, and I knew I had to get 2 kids out of the house. That's all I knew. And I really don't like that they don't give you the proper resources when they do jobs like this. I don't even know if it's a test or what, but I had no shoes on, no weapons. I had on a basketball. It looked like I had on one of my kids' clothes. I had on basketball shorts and a t-shirt. I don't even know how that happened. And I just knew I had to get these kids out. I knew I had a job. So I was searching all these rooms, going from room to room. This place was huge. And I couldn't really even find anything. I don't know if I wasn't close to the kitchen or what. I didn't know. So I found an office, and I was going through the drawers, and I actually found like a little, like it looked like somebody, whoever owned the house, was had a retirement, and it was a gift, like a retirement gift. It was like a knife with all these different attachments. So that was the thing I took. And I took these 2 kids with me, and they didn't have any clothes on either, just shorts, no shoes or anything. And I said, we got to go. I don't even know if they spoke English, but they followed me. And right when I was getting to, an out, I found an out, and it was a garage. Finally, I found like a little garage. So that's where I needed to go. So as soon as I opened the door, there was a woman, she was in the garage, and she saw me, I saw her. And the memory is so detailed. I still remember it. I can still remember, like, I was so close to her face. I could see like the lines in her face. I had to put the knife to her throat because she was going for her phone. She dropped all her groceries and everything. I don't know if she was like a handler in this house or what, but she didn't fight too hard. I had the knife to her throat, and I needed the keys, so she gave them to me. And I took her black SUV, and we were gone. I took the kids to the mark, wherever I was supposed to. We called it a mark, wherever you have to be. And all I remember is being back in my house in the morning and just remembering everything and having different clothes on again. And that's what I remembered. So of course, that was mind-blowing, and I'm like, what the F just happened when you wake up and you remember something like that? And of course, I'm a human.
Right.
So my whole life, I said the same things anybody else would say. Is this real? Am I going crazy? What was it, a dream? Like, what is this? Or you can, if you're waking up and having all these bruises. One time I woke up and my knee was dislocated during the night. It's not really a normal thing to happen. Stuff like that would happen. And you don't realize that maybe I was doing something for somebody and, just plop me back at home, and now I have a dislocated knee during my sleep time, which is really strange to happen.
That is strange to happen.
Yeah, so that was I physically remembered that happening though, and that was the last time. So, and I don't know what they were doing with the children. I haven't looked into it because I don't think it's safe to. I haven't, even though I can, like I could remote view it if I wanted to, but I'm not quite sure if it's safe enough to do that.
Was this like a rescue, or were you stealing them? Do you know?
No clue. No, you're not allowed to ask. You're not allowed to ask.
Right.
It looked like it might have been somewhat of a rescue, but I don't trust any of the people that I've ever been forced to work for. They are not trustworthy. I don't care what anybody says. Some people say they loved working on for these factions and stuff. I didn't. I had a horrible experience with every faction. I worked for mercenary groups. I was forced to work for, different military factions off planet. And even on Earth, we were doing more work. And I don't trust any of them. None of them. Because they're using kidnapped, tortured children for their work and forcing you. You don't get paid. You don't get anything. It's always under threat of death anyways. Anything they force you to do, they've threatened you to do it. So, I don't trust any of these people. And that's why I'm saying I don't know. It could have been anything. Who knows?
That's wild. That's wild. That man, I don't know how I would feel waking up after that, especially not knowing.
Yeah, it was weird. Do you want me to keep going, or you want me to slow down? What are you thinking?
Yeah, go. Well, actually, I did want to. I forgot to mention this. I wrote it down, but
yes,
I just wanted to go back to the part of one of your past lives there where you said you saw dog people, basically like a dog man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
like
that they were trying to get you. Yeah, Anubis. Yeah, and they were trying to get you to open a portal. I think it's really interesting that that every or not every, but the majority of experiences with Dogman in today, like modern day now, like have you heard of the cryptid Dogman
I've heard of it. I've never
at all?
really watched or read anything about it though. Because I guess I didn't know it was it similar to what I described? Like Anubis?
Yeah,
Oh, it is?
it looks like Anubis, like a dog person,
Aliens.
like a just a yeah.
And you
So
know what? He
it's
doesn't have they don't control themselves though. This particular dog man, these people, when I looked inside, I tried to use my ability to look deep inside his body. There was like a
yeah,
glob of worms inside his like almost like near his solar plexus that that controlled him. So he didn't
huh.
even realize that he was being controlled by another. It was almost like an alien inside an alien. It was so strange, but they were worms, like parasites. They were controlling him.
That's
So he wasn't just
That's
in there
even
by
more
himself.
interesting. Right. That's
So,
even more interesting because all
yeah.
these Dogmen stories sound like super soldier stuff. Like they hear this like metal door or metal gate and then a Dogman shows up. Then they hear the metal door again and the Dogman's gone. It's like passing through a portal. And there is a gentleman, a security guard. I believe he's trying to stay unnamed so he can keep his job, but he works at Oak Ridge and he's a sniper for whatever.
Mm.
So Oak Ridge is like CERN. It's a smaller scale, so it's a
Oh, okay.
um particle accelerator, and they are opening portals, and he stands on like a catwalk above the portal, and his job is to shoot whatever comes through.
Oh,
And there
physically
has
they're
been
coming through?
physically they're coming through, and supposedly dogmen have come through this portal at Oak Ridge in Tennessee.
Yeah, those are and you know what? I don't even have any harsh feelings. I mean, I know that life happened and everything, but this was really interesting when so I did a hypnotic regression. My very first one is when I saw this dog man. And I had gone so deep, I had no idea that because Dr. Green, he called me a portal person. I didn't even know what that meant
Yeah.
because I was just a kid when I met him. He said, I'm one of the portal people because my portal is within. So the portal opens inside me. That's how things are able to take over me. And I'm able to travel and traverse to the outer realms is because of that. I'm a portal person. But anyways, so I was doing this first, my very first hypnotic regression, and I had gone so deep and I met this dog man. And what I thought was interesting, which blew my mind, is that I could interact with him in present time. It was almost like a hole
Well,
opened and he could, he was coming through. And, the thing he said, you would think that he would be like, hey, nice to meet you, whatever. And all he said was, get back to work. That's what he said. He didn't say, hello, it's so nice to meet you from a different realm. He said, get back to work. Even in what I look like now, he could recognize me as a slave. And he said, get back to work. And he showed me his staff. And for some reason, I knew his staff had power. I knew what he could do with it because only one of the dogmen could command thousands of humans. They're very strong-willed, very strong, powerful mind, and even stronger because they're controlled by something else within inside them. So that was really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit more about Project Traveler and what happened when I
Yes,
got a little bit
absolutely.
older. So, like I said, the Project Travel, I did a lot of occult programs for them. And, pretty much my whole life I've been terrified of paranormal things because I didn't have these memories, like I said, until about 5 or 6 years ago. I didn't know all this. And I was terrified of everything. I was sleeping with the lights on. I'm terrified of ghosts, terrified of horror movies. Everything was scaring me. And probably because I had done so much of this and I was having a lot of things were reaching out to me then. That's why I was scared. Things were trying to talk to me. Things wanted me to talk to them. And I thought I was under oppression from a demonic horde because I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I was scared all the time. All kinds of paranormal things were happening to me. And I'm so glad that I was able to figure out what it was because I didn't want to be afraid of that anymore. And now I feel way more strong, a lot stronger than I was before. But anyways, they were using me for Project Traveler and I was forced to work for this company called Monarch Solutions, and they have like this catalog. So I was probably like in my early 20s, maybe, and part of this catalog are these, what we consider, I don't know, families that are like well off. We consider them like elites. They could order from this catalog if they wanted to have somebody like a host come to their house and do hosting for them. So I was being, sold for like a weekend here and there. And they treated me well. If I went to the house, they treated me just fine. I had my own room, I had food, I had water, I had everything I needed. But it's just weird that they wanted me to do these kinds of things. And I'm going to talk about one particular family, because this particular family is dedicated to Bacchus. And Bacchus has become kind of like a familiar spirit to me because I work with him so much and I'm able to speak with them so much. So I don't have any harsh feelings for Bacchus. But this particular family worshipped Bacchus. And they said, and Bacchus is what they call a familiar daemon. And they had found Bacchus back in 1532. So this was a generational spirit that had come down through the line with them. And this family thought that this is how they maintain their finances and their, power in this world and success is by their connection to Bacchus. They thought that's how that happened. So I don't know, maybe once or twice a year they would hire a host to come to their house so they could, pretty much eat dinner with their god. They wanted to spend time with their god. He was their god. So when I would go there, it would be me, sometimes by myself, or sometimes there was going to be a gentleman there that he could do the same thing. I'm not the only person that can do this. So what they wanted us to do is they would have us lay down, and sometimes they would do some type of little ritual. Not very often, though. It wasn't because it wasn't needed. I think people think, you have to have rituals to do this. I don't. I can do this in like, all I have to do is count it down for 3 minutes and I could start doing it. So it's not needed. Sometimes they do it just for the aesthetics, and tradition kind of thing, maybe like that, but it's not needed. And except for Bacchus thinks it's needed because he's so old. He used to be called Dionysus. He's so old that he thinks that they still get it in their minds that they are expecting a certain behavior from their followers. Their followers are supposed to provide reverence and, these ritualistic type behaviors that it doesn't, it doesn't always consider like sacrifice and everything. He's saying, where's the, the flowers and the gems and the, the liqueurs and stuff that they're supposed to leave out for them. Because back in the old days, they would leave out vegetables and fruit in the fields for them, like as an offering. And they didn't do that anymore. So this particular family, they had hired me, and they would, like I said, they had me in their house, and they had this other gentleman, and they would sometimes, have us be nude or sometimes not. It just depends on what they planned for that evening. And this particular time, I ended up going into trance, and I let Bacchus take over my body. And what I think is so strange is that, and Bacchus would take over the gentleman too, but what they were one of the things they wanted to do was create these children of the moon. So they feel like if you have a demon inside you and they have physical relations with you, and if one of the people were to get pregnant or impregnate someone, they feel like that's demonic bloodline. That'd be a direct, descendant of a demonic. So they feel like they're creating their own antichrist this way, the children of the moon, by doing this type of process, letting people take over them. So that's what they would do. And there was this one time that I was hosting and I let Bacchus take over me. And what they wanted to do was have dinner with them. So I tried to stand up, and I swear my legs felt like 100 pounds each. I could barely walk because he wasn't used to being in a physical body where he'd get up to walk around and everything. So he was very, heavy. And so I felt like I was trudging with cement blocks on my feet to a table. And once I got to the table, like I said, I wasn't even in there. It was Bacchus. He took over my body, and he was starting. They had food for him, and this is their god. So that I don't know what they expect, but he started ripping and tearing the food like an animal, like like a pig or something. It was really disgusting. And he didn't like that they were disgusted by the display. He was so angry. He felt very disrespected. And he's like, and then they were asking him questions through me, obviously. They were asking him questions like about their business and, about their boyfriends and husbands and things like that. He also felt like that was extreme disrespect. How dare you call a god down here, for this, and treated him like a, 2-bit psychic kind of thing. He was very upset. He doesn't like that kind of thing. So they all have different personalities, all these different elder gods, what we would consider like elder gods. And not all of them are what people, sometimes people call them demons, but these were, Dionysus was worshipped in like, different cultures. It wasn't just like he was considered a demon. He wasn't, the identity shifts, and in terms of like, cultural beliefs too, the identity shifts. So it wasn't just him saying that, other people started to take on these other belief systems about who they thought, Bacchus was. So like I said, they weren't really happy about, him ripping and tearing the food and acting kind of like an animal, but that's what they asked for. They wanted to have dinner with their god, and that's what we gave them, for whatever price they paid.
Right. That's I'm surprised that they thought anything else would have happened when
Yeah,
they're eating
I'm
with,
surprised too. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
you know.
Don't you watch movies? Don't you watch any
Yeah,
movies?
right. Like well, first of all, like like you said, like he hasn't been in a physical body, and the fact that you had such a hard time getting to the table, and I'm surprised he was able to make you eat.
Yeah, he wanted to eat because he wanted to. They don't. I don't feel them like get angry when they take over a body because it's their chance
Yeah.
to step in this world. So there was this one demonic entity, and she's a female version of one, and people, which is really strange. Okay, so people think this particular entity is like an angel, and they they
Yeah.
really revere her. She's made a huge comeback. Her name's Isis. She's made this huge comeback, and I'm not saying because I'm not religious, and I'm not New Age or anything like that. So I just give the information exactly as they tell me. So this particular being said she wanted to tell people thank you for bringing her back to life, because these elder gods and these old ancient beings, they think that if they don't have followers and aren't provided reverence, that they're going to be dying out. That's just how they feel. I don't say that for them. That's what they say. They say if they don't have followers, they could be dying. So this particular being, she thinks it's funny that, you pretty much have brought me back to life. And she said, yeah, I am an angel, but I'm an angel of darkness. And she said her main focus is to take this world. She's like, we're coming, and I'm coming to take this world. And she said in the beginning, there was a huge barrier put up between their world and ours. So they can't come freely. They have to be invited. And she said that's where that old legend comes from. Like, how they say vampires have to be invited in? She said that legend is
Yes.
from them, because in the beginning, that barrier stopped them from doing that, and they have to be invited in. And it's true. They have to be invited. Like, I have to invite them into my space, and a demonic would have to be invited by you in some form to come in their body. They can't just, to me, from my experience, they can't just force themselves on you. There has to be some type of connection or some type of opening in some way. That's just in my own experience. I'm not saying that it's never happened there, that there might be some situations I don't know of, but just from what I'm experiencing, they usually have to be invited in some way. And sometimes we do invite them and we don't know. Like, somebody's, like I said, when I was a medium in the 1400s, I invited that darkness into me because I was so angry, and I wanted anything that could help me to help me harm those men that had hurt me with their inquisition. So, in a way, I had invited something into me. So it's just interesting to hear them say that.
That is very interesting.
Yeah,
to
there's so
hear them.
much. Like I said, I have 2 full books full of this stuff. So there's so much we could go into, about anything, any
Yes.
entity,
So
any aliens, any, anything.
that's
There's so many.
awesome.
I've talked to so many aliens. I've talked to, what's really cute? I thought was really cute. I talked to I was working with an Arcturian, and they have 3 fingers, and on their hands they have like a little bit of fuzz, like hair on their hands.
Yeah.
It was really cute, and they're blue and small. The ones I saw were very small, and when they walk, they almost look like they glide. Like, it was really interesting to see,
That is
when the Arcturians
that,
come, they always have these big speeches, and they want to just, they're such cheerleaders for the human race. They have these big speeches, and we're watching and we're waiting. We're hoping you guys can move forward and make changes, and it's always such an interesting experience when an Arcturian comes through.
that's kind of cool in a way.
Yeah, they are cool.
So when when these demons take over your body, how does that feel? You're obviously able to see what's happening, right?
Yeah, I'm conscious. Like, especially
Yes.
in like a hypnotic regression. I use
Yep.
trance So I'm in such a deep trance. I don't feel any pain, and it's actually, you would not believe how complex the mind is. You think that you know how, what is inside there. You have no clue until you're able to go inside. And one time I went so far, I actually saw the Matrix, because they talk about the Matrix like an external
No,
creation,
ones and
within
zeros, yeah.
the world and stuff. When I saw the
Yeah.
Matrix, it was within the mind. It was in each individual's mind. The Matrix was in there. There was lines everywhere. There's boxes, things were locked up. It was so interesting to see that. So the mind
Yeah.
is so complex. It can create so many things. Just like the altars I have. I wish we had time for me to talk about the altars. I might have to come back on, because that is crazy how the altars live and create their own lives within your mind. It's so interesting. So,
Yeah.
when I'm doing this hosting for other entities, I feel fine. Like I said, I'm in a very warm, comfortable space, but I'm also conscious. So if I need to say something while they're speaking, I will be able to break through. You can hear my voice kind of crack and change when I'm doing it. But once I'm done doing it, I feel fine. I could get up, watch TV, make some food, no lingering issues, no lingering fear. All the fear drops away. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages that I've been able to make, doing this, is that the fear dropped away. Because like I said, a lot of us, we've watched a lot of movies, we've been getting a lot of information throughout our lives to make us afraid, of these things, and thinking these are the things that are taking over our lives. But from my own experience, it wasn't them taking over me. It was humans doing it. It's very much a human to human destruction. We think that, they're over our shoulder, making us do bad things, and that it was humans doing it. I know, because I used to be a human doing bad things and nobody forced me. It's so interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, they, bleh, if I can frickin' speak. So go with the thing that you said about our mind is being so vast. We only use 5% of our brain, which
Yes.
is freaking so weird. Like there's so I like there's I feel like there's so many things that we used to be able to do at one point that we just I don't know what it is. Because I'm conspiracy theorist. I think there's a they and that they're trying to keep us from realizing our true power. And it seems like you've cracked into that. So like I think mediums and people that have these like remote viewing abilities and all that stuff, like I think you're the next step of ascension, technically, to me, in my opinion. You're able to unlock more of your space. And like there's a gentleman on that
Yeah.
him and his wife have a mind force, and they've created all this stuff in their mind force, and I'm just like, that's more of a brain level than I'm working on right now, um
Oh yeah, it's
so
possible. It is completely possible. It's
yeah.
entirely possible. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've felt it. I've explored it. And it's vast. You can't even explore everything inside your mind. It's like it is having like a world inside you, like a universe that you will never be able to explore the entire thing. It's just so much in there. So nobody needs to think that they're just a small person living on Earth. You're vast. Just the fact that you have a human mind is amazing. There's so much to explore. There's so many things to look at, so many things to find. There's so many things hidden that like I said, I found this in my own mind. I knew there was something wrong with me. I knew I was different, but I couldn't grasp it because of they use memory suppression technology in order to stop us from remembering. A lot of mind control still running, a lot of alters still control, a lot of the things I did, until I was able to push past that and, obtain a lot of the memory that I had from doing these and using, remote viewing. I do astral travel, by locating and hosting in order to continue to obtain more information about things that happened to me, or even to look at. I use remote viewing now to look at like secret documents. I'll sneak into certain places and look at their papers and, see what, and try to talk to, other handlers. That's a big deal that I should talk about. If we ever do another show, I talk about like the aftercare program and what I was able to view, and what there's an entire agency that deals with us assets after we're taken from the programs. They are assigned to us. You know, they each have a caseload that they're assigned to control and monitor us with whatever way they can. They have different machinery, technology to do that, to stop us from telling people about this.
Yeah, there was we were talking about that on a previous episode about how they get people to that we could be walking down the street and there could be like we could walk past like 5 people that know all these secrets but have been somehow sworn to secrecy. And if they could just tell us, it would be amazing for everybody to be in on this information. But again, I think there is a ruling class. Like
Yeah.
obviously, like when I talked to Tony Rodriguez with his 20 and back, there is a ruling class like this. How he got into it was he pissed off some rich kid, and this rich kid was like, "My dad is Illuminati," and then so then he got taken by aliens and he was abducted, and then that's how that happened. And it's really, I mean, I really hope I've never been abducted. If I have been, I have no memory of it. And from the
Yeah, I
more
didn't have
people
a
that I
memory of
talk
it
to,
either until I was in my mid
exactly.
40s. I couldn't remember. I mean, we have memories that bleed through, but you don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Trust me, you won't know. If you see
So,
yourself, if I literally saw myself doing some jobs for people, and I'm like, there's no fucking,
mhm.
there's no way that I could do that. I just, knowing who I am now, I consider myself a particular good person. I try to help people, but just to see
Yeah.
myself doing things, I'm like, how? I don't, it was just really strange to find it. There's so much more to get into, though.
Yes. We should definitely do another show. We'll schedule one. But I do want to tell you. So I felt compelled to tell Tony this story as well. But after listening to you, tell your story and stuff, like I almost wonder if maybe I have been abducted or something. But anyway, so I was so I have some, childhood trauma, which a lot of us do. Um, I wasn't, well, my mom wasn't the greatest, which she did try, but she was a little bit too physical with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not as nurturing once my dad left. But anyways, regardless, so I was going to therapy and I was trying to heal and I was starting a spiritual journey and whatnot. And I did a regression therapy session trying to remember some things. So there was this really negative thing that came out about some things that happened to me between me and my mother that I remembered when I was little. And then this other memory also came up, and I don't know if it's a memory or if I'm remembering a dream, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's very weird.
Yeah,
So,
hard to tell.
right. So basically, my sister and I are walking. We used to pretend that we were hunting aliens or monsters or something like that in the woods. And all the listeners have heard this story 100 times. And they're like, "Oh God, here he goes again, telling this goddamn story." But so we were walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden, and I used to wear glasses when I was a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden, like everything that I could see was like a tint of blue, and there was like a very thin layer of snow on the ground, and as soon as it like turned blue, the snow was gone, and probably about 10, 15 feet in front of me, there's this little village of mushroom people, and they're stoking a fire in the middle of their little village, and they just kind of like turn and look at me, or at least I think they're looking at me because they don't look like Toad from Mario or anything like that. They look like
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms. They're just walking around like people. They don't look like people with a mushroom head or anything like that. And they were probably about 3 inches tall, maybe four or something. They were very small. They're very as much mushroom as you can be a mushroom, just walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a tap on the back of my head, and my glasses fall off my face. And I feel something on my shoulder. I kind of like just turn my head, and there's a mushroom on my shoulder, and telepathically this thing goes, "You don't need those." And I go, I'm like, "My glasses?" And he goes, "Yes." And then right as he says yes, it was like a flip of the switch. My sister's standing there. She's like, "You all right?" And I'm like, I lost my glasses." So she came over to try and help me, and we're just kind of like scanning the ground, and she stepped on my glasses, and I flipped out. I'm like, "Oh my God, I need my glasses. I need my glasses." So I run home. My mom says, "Hey, you have a appointment in a couple weeks. I'm not going to buy you new glasses because if your prescription's changed, then I'm going to have to buy you new glasses again." So I went a couple weeks without glasses. We went and got my eyes retested, um, and all that stuff. And my doctor's sitting there looking at the papers, and he just kind of like swings around in his little swivel chair, and he goes, "Hey man, you don't need glasses." And we're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, looking at this, your eyes gotten better. You got 20/20 by the looks of this." And my mom's like, "All right, cool. What happened?" And he's like, "I don't know, but they just kind of strengthened. Maybe get glasses for when you read or write and watch TV." And he goes, "But other than that, I wouldn't keep them on your face too long." And my mom's like, "All right, well, we're not getting glasses." So ever since then, I haven't worn glasses. So I kind of wonder if there was some kind of something happening, if that's a real actual memory. Well, I mean, so I remember the doctor visit, and I remember being out in the woods with my sister. What I didn't remember organically was the mushroom people stuff. So out of the regression is what I remember that from. So I
Can you
didn't
hear
know
me?
if maybe that was just a dream and it just happened to be around the same time that my eyes got better, or if these frickin' things healed my eyes.
It could have been. It could have been. I mean, everything's possible, in my opinion. I feel like you. What if you stepped into something, remote viewing yourself, or I mean, I've done it so many times, like traveling and seeing stuff like I was like just a few weeks ago, I saw this giant plasmoid type being. It looked like an underwater jellyfish, but it was massive. So who knows what we can step into and see?
Yeah, yeah. I always when I started learning about the 20 and back, and I was like, "Am I special enough to be one of the?" I'm like, "I'm not special enough. I don't think I'm cool enough." But I do have this one story. The mushroom people. That's a good story. I'll tell everybody.
No, it is though. You could have stepped into something. You might have
Yeah,
some type of ability you just didn't like. I didn't know I had this until, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago. I didn't even know I could do this, or I
right.
didn't remember I could do it. It's more like it.
I got it's I think Tony said he wasn't into almost I think he said also he didn't start remembering things until he was like 40 as well. I still have a couple years before I'm in my 40s. So maybe stuff will start popping up then. I don't
It
know.
could be. I would have never expected this, but now that I have it,
Right.
I wouldn't want to go back to being what I was before and being in the dark. I would never want that. I
Right.
want to keep
Right.
going and keep discovering. I have to know everything. Some people don't want to know about what happened to them, but for me, there's like something inside me that I need the truth about everything.
Yes. Yeah, so one quick question. Um,
Yeah.
so when you do the hosting, you said that sometimes they want to try and create like a seed. Have they ever tried to like whoever's having you host? Have they ever tried to get you pregnant
Uh-oh, I think
yourself?
you're breaking up a little bit. I can't hear the last thing you said.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, we lost connection there for a second.
Uh-oh, I think you're breaking up a little.
Oh no, not now.
Yeah, I think you're breaking up a little.
Well, this is a terrible time to start breaking up, but how's that sound? Am I still distorted?
A little bit. It's coming in and out. Like you'll start talking, it sounds clear, and then it'll just completely disappear.
I wonder if I'm getting too close to the microphone or something.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
All right. Well, we'll have to schedule another one, and I'll just ask the other two questions that I had for you then. So
Oh yeah,
everybody
sounds great. I'd
listening,
love to
yeah,
talk about altars, and I got tons of information.
sweet. I might have to check out your books too. So everybody listening,
Oh,
go check out her books, the Gray Mouse series. And let her know what you think. And I hope
yeah,
you
thank
guys
you.
enjoyed today's episode. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Leave a rating and review. I'd appreciate it. And other than that, you guys know. Oh wait, if your podcatcher doesn't let you leave a review, you can leave one on the website where the weird ones are, podcast.com. You can also get coffee, merch, and the hot sauce. And I'm looking at my camera like it's on right now, and but that's okay. Yeah. But all right, you guys know the drill. Question everything and stay weird. Thanks for being here.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish.